I don't think there's a map more iconic in multiplayer video gaming than Blood Gulch. I take that back. That's very biased towards when I was a youth. That was a dumb thing to say. I don't have any desire, and or do I think it's a worthwhile expenditure of time to sit around for 15 minutes and talk about, oh, how the good old days are gone. Go make good old days, for God's sake. You know what I heard the other day? You know what? Remind me to tell you later, because I've got to talk about Halo first. Standing in these arenas when they're empty is a good reminder of just how sort of far laterally map design has come in multiplayer video gaming. You know, Halo released in 2000 and something, 1, 2, who knows? It's impossible to say. But multiplayer maps back then were still very much rooted in the lineage of, I suppose it must be like Unreal Tournament or something like that. Or probably Quake, I suppose, is maybe Arena is probably the more influential game from that time. But multiplayer maps were still sort of design-wise rooted in the philosophy of those old arenas, which is that this is almost like a sports stadium. Until Call of Duty 4, map design didn't really shift to being a little more organic and a little more open. All of the games that were more like that, like Medal of Honor and whatnot, were more niche than your high-profile arena sort of shooter games. So in some ways, the Halo series represents kind of the shifting point, because if you look from Halo 1 to Halo 3, by the time Halo 3 came out, map design for Halo had shifted a lot more towards that sort of Call of Duty, Medal of Honor kind of philosophy, and away from the symmetrical arena thing that was a lot more prevalent in the 90s and early 2000s. But part of the reason I think it feels odd to be in a space like this when there's nobody there is, you know, apart from the fact that you're probably watching this, you're probably going, oh my God, all these memories, and there's like that cave over there, and this weird little dark patch, this little unremarkable and odd dark zone over there, and you remember like the scrambles to try and sprint across this big open field while people would chase you down, you know, if you're playing Capture the Flag, just trying to get back to your side in this sort of horrible no man's land. But in addition to all those memories, part of it is, you know, this is set up for people to be here. There are guns and vehicles scattered around in a way that makes it obviously sort of sporting. So when you stand here when there's nobody here, it feels a little bit like being in a sports stadium all by yourself. Add into that there's no music whatsoever, and you also just have the general early 2000s surrealism of the Halo, of the blurry Halo sci-fi skybox. And you've got a recipe for being in a really odd place. I don't know, you know, if I died, and after I died, you know, you go up to the pearly gates and then they judge you. How did you do? I feel like if you were like a 7 or an 8 out of 10 in your life, they send you to Blood Gulch to just wander around. Such iconic colors and such an amazing vibe. But that's just Halo, you know, that's just Halo. Timberland is a personal pick for me. It really kind of boils down a big part of what the Halo aesthetic is to me, which is like sci-fi camping trip. As a multiplayer map, I don't think Timberland was probably as popular as certainly as Blood Gulch, but just generally as a lot of other ones. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, I'm pretty sure this was exclusive to the PC version, at least initially. But also, it's a little more chaotic of a design. It does lean maybe a little bit more in sort of what would become the philosophy of multiplayer shooter maps, which is things being slightly less discernible off the bat, you know, it being a little bit less clear where you were in relation to everything else. It's just a little less symmetrical, a little less predictable. Do you think these maps are lonely now that nobody plays on them? You know, do you think Timberland misses having swaths of American youth, world youth, I don't know why I said American, swaths of world youth and young adults and adults, you know, running around laughing? Do you think Timberland is existentially distraught? The answer to that, of course, is no. Timberland is a bunch of numbers in a Word document somewhere that somebody hit compile on or whatever. I don't know how coding works. But it's funny how when you say that, it makes you feel bad for Timberland, which really just means that you miss all of the people shouting and cheering on Timberland. It doesn't really feel right to have these spaces totally empty. And walking around in them and sort of goofing around in them feels almost more solitary than playing a single-player campaign. And which isn't actually surprising if you think about it, because single-player campaigns are like, they've got words and stuff in them, people chit-chatting, a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, yabber-jabber, story stuff about the flood or whatever. So being in these spaces alone, it's a real sense of intimacy, you know? It's kind of like, not even like reading a diary, but it's like, I don't know, reading a diary that the pages are too faded to read anymore, but like, you know, that this is a terrible analogy. It's a really focused, quintessential version of, I think, that kind of literary intimacy that video games can have with us when you play them alone. You know, I know multiplayer games are kind of, I don't know about more popular, but some sort of connectivity in your video games is really sort of exceptionally common at this stage of the game. But anyone you know who's ever played all the way through a single player game and like taken their time will tell you just how deep that sense of immersion goes. I mean, it really is like reading a book in the way that it kind of tangles itself up with your imagination. So blah blah blah, video games are really cool. Okay, we get it. We just wanted to see Halo maps. All right, you want to see Halo maps? Let's look at another one, shall we? We're only going to stop on this level briefly because it's a shitty level and it's not fun to play. But the vibe of it is really weird, especially when you don't have people to kill. I guess it's meant to be like two ships next to each other in space. But for some reason there's like wind howling as though it's in a cavern. It's just a really weird energy in this place. I think most people agree this is the worst Halo multiplayer map. That's just not good. And it has a really creepy energy. So I just wanted to stop in and like jog your memory, see if you had any fun times on this map, because I did not. Anyway. And the last map that we're going to look at today, this is a little map called Battle Creek. Personal favorite of mine. I've always really loved small symmetrical maps, little tiny sort of outdoor arenas. What you see here is the whole map. I think we can all appreciate the sort of diminutive comfort that we get from being in this little zone, because this is it. It's just this tiny little bowl. It's kind of like a really mini version of Blood Gulch. And I think after looking at several of these maps, I think I finally sort of can put into words what it is, the fascination with walking around these places. It feels like if you've ever, if you went to school and that school happened to have recess and that recess happened to have a playground, have you ever gone back and just sort of wandered through as a fully grown adult the children's playground at your local elementary school? Don't necessarily recommend it as a matter of practice, but with reasonable judgment, you know, the right time of day, perhaps night, a quick little whiff of that aesthetic, you know, never hurt anybody. And being in an abandoned multiplayer map very much has the same feeling. You know, what is a multiplayer map when you're in middle school other than just a playground to play games and goof around, right? It wasn't like all of the time we spent with our friends in these areas was strictly with the rules of the game. You would do all sorts of things, collaborative things, competitive things. We utilized these spaces in the same way that we utilized a physical playground, and we had sort of relationships with the different areas, same as we would different spots on the playground at our local elementary school. The difference is we weren't tiny kids when we played this. We were like teens or pre-teens, or some of us were actual adults. You know, I think I can't be the only person who thinks back on like my early 20s now, and the games I was playing around that time, and has the same sort of nostalgia for then as myself then had nostalgia for high school and then to elementary school, etc., etc. And so maybe part of what's so fun as an adult about a multiplayer video game is it's maybe the only space that you as an adult can engage with an environment in the same way as you did as A kid on a playground. Huh. I don't know if I ever really thought of a multiplayer video game in those kind of terms, right? There's not really very many spaces as an adult where you can be sort of playful and imaginative. Not that playing multiplayer games always is, because I know all you guys are probably out there screaming slurs or something on League of Legends or whatever, which you should not do, for God's sake. But I guess I'm just trying to speak to the fact that, like, yeah, okay, it's not all this sort of like whimsical, imaginative playfulness when you're an adult. We sort of do lose sight of that. But maybe video games are kind of like the only place that you can swing on a swing set as an adult, or play capture the flag as an adult, which is kind of unfortunate unless you're gonna be one of those like Quidditch guys. But that's not my bag. I think it's better if I do it in the privacy of my own home. I don't want people to see me having fun. I guess that's the whole point. You should be embarrassed to be having joy as an adult. I started this video by saying, well, I don't just want this to be a nostalgia fest, but it kind of is, at least in part, why it's interesting to be in these environments again, How fun. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please post a comment down below saying you liked it so that I know that I'm making things that you want to see. I need very clear emotional communication from you so I know that I'm doing the right thing. If you want to see more empty multiplayer maps, I kind of want to do it, so we probably will do it. But if you've got like specific games you want to look at, post them down below. But in the meantime, I have a song for you today, just like I always do. Please enjoy it, and I'll see you on the next video. I don't know. Yeah, listen, we're not trying too hard today, and that's okay.